Call the meeting of the Ojai City Council to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Francina. Here. Councilmember Haney.
I think I'm here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, I think you're here too, so. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. You'll all rise and join me. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes in the agenda?
Just, no, I would just, I'm going to pull item I just for congratulatory comment on the letter.
Okay, and we do have one card that somebody would like to comment on, so if we pull that.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
for I.
Are there any other changes in the agenda?
Move to approve.
Okay, we got a motion?
Second.
Okay, without objection, okay, the agenda is approved. And no presentations this evening, so let's go to consent agenda, with the exception of number I. Do I have a motion to approve the other member?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Not hearing any objections, so ordered. We will now take up the item I under the consent calendar. And Jim Zellman, are you in the audience?
I am, sir.
Hey, come on down, Jim.
Thank you, members of the council. It'd be very brief. I first of all, I just want to say that speaking for the whole committee, we really appreciate the opportunity to really engage some of the questions and, more importantly, some of the severity of the potential impacts from environmental policy. And that also we are very conscious of the fact that many of the environmental impacts may occur, for example, in counties' policy and decisions, not just those within Ojai. So that while our group and our conversations are focused on the areas within Ojai where you have some jurisdiction, we also recognize that a great deal of our future vis-a-vis the climate is going to be affected by Ventura and the state and entities beyond us. We've come to appreciate in a very profound way that while if we did everything we could possibly do in Ojai, the actual quantitative impact on climate is pretty minuscule. On the other hand, Margaret Mead is famously quoted as saying, "Never underestimate the power of the individual or a small group of people to change the world." In fact, that's the only way it's ever happened. And we recognize that the City Council, that you, have a voice. And it's a respected voice, and it's a powerful voice, and it's backed by an extraordinary community. And that climate is one of those issues that kind of transcends differences politically, ideologically, philosophically, in other ways. It's an umbrella within which we're all going to sink or swim one way or the other. And that we see that the conversations we're beginning to have around climate, in addition to the kind of technical solutions and policies that can fall out of that, really have to do with how can we unify the community, how can we offer a access to some of these larger questions of how we relate and how we take responsibility for the future. In this particular issue on the consent calendar, we came upon the realization that the supervisors in the county had actually done some very visionary decisions and commitments that took a lot of courage to perhaps not go with what the fossil fuel industry would have wished, and had made some policies which we certainly endorsed and appreciated. And then we learned that the city, the county staff had effectively countered, using some administrative technique, those policies, and really basically undermined the decision of the city supervisor, of the county supervisors. And so in the council's willingness to write this letter and to take a stand, basically, a stand for the climate, a stand for what's right, a stand for empowering those who have the responsibility for our collective future, is a courageous act on part of the council. So I'm here to say thank you on behalf of our committee, but also thank you as a citizen of Ojai for really having the courage to necessarily speak out in the most powerful and direct way that can be spoken. And hopefully this is just the beginning of using the platform that you enjoy as a place to really speak for the climate, speak for the population, and to really take the kind of courageous stands that are reflected by this letter. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I
Bill?
just wanted, Jim, thank you personally. I thank everyone on this dais also, really, thank you. It's such a well-researched, well-written issue, letter that gets to the core of the issue of how you get from cup and lip and what can happen sometimes to sabotage that. And so I absolutely commend completely. And the only reason I pull it from the consent is I don't want this just sent to the county planning department and members of the Board of Supervisors. I want it sent to every city in Ventura County and every city council member in the city of, in the county of Ventura, because this is a county general plan and everybody's surrounded by unincorporated area. And that would be my only suggestion, is that we spread this more, we do a direct communication to each city in the county as well.
Okay, well, I would certainly appreciate that, and I think that reflects and echoes the commitment that you've already expressed to be a model, but a model where you're putting your money where your mouth is and where you're really speaking action and not just simply giving lip service to good ideas.
So that was my only comment.
So thank you.
Okay. And so staff will see to it that the letter is distributed in that fashion? Okay, good. Okay, public hearing on animal keeping ordinance. So, Mr. City Manager, you want to commence the process before I open the hearing?
Yes, thank you. We'll do a brief staff report, and Lucas is actually going to present a couple of slides as an overview. The ordinance is dense, so he'll try to focus on some of the key items. But just as a little bit of background, a few months back, we notified council that a 2003 zoning update removed the animal keeping standards from the city code, which from all research we could find appeared to have been an oversight. The council then asked the planning commission to take a look and review other city noise ordinances and prepare a draft for consideration, which is what we have before us tonight. And with that, Lucas will give a high-level overview of that draft.
Right, thank you for that background. And yes, this did come to the Planning Commission as requested by this council. And on 3 separate meetings, the Planning Commission and staff really dove into the details of what you're seeing here tonight as a proposal for an ordinance. There were no standards. We do not have standards that currently exist. All we have are use categories that identify where animal keeping could be located within the city. So animal keeping, kind of the foundation of how you begin to understand that is really kind of through the humane treatment of animals, whether it be through proper shelter, food and water, daily care. All those are embedded within this draft ordinance that you see before you tonight. Animal keeping standards themselves, just to kind of give you, like the city manager was mentioning, kind of a high level look at it. We had broken it down into large versus medium versus small animals, and those have been provided within this draft ordinance by definition. In addition to that, it's identified the different types of lots that would qualify for those types of animals, ensuring that there's enough space for those types of animals.
Can you, or if you don't mind, I just want to give some examples for people following along. Large animals tend to be horses, cows, and other cleft-hoofed animals.
Sure, yes.
Medium animals are sheep, goats, swine, and other animals of similar size, and small animals include chinchillas, pygmy goats, miniature pigs, pot-bellied pigs, mini horses, mini cows. And then there's also domestic animals such as dogs and cats.
Correct. From a zoning standpoint, all of those areas that have been identified within both of these tables in Title 10, Chapter 2 are unchanged. Those continue to be enforced. There are no changes proposed with these 2 tables. In addition to that, I think it's important to identify that the unaltered dogs and cats are already embedded within our code. We're not touching any of that, any of those regulations, as well as the animal nuisances regarding barking dogs, threatening animals within those parameters.
Or bees.
Correct. Bees are not
Bees
being touched.
alone, too.
Bees are untouched.
Those already exist.
Yep. Well, the standards for that already exist, yes. One wrinkle within this is the manure management, which is really kind of what brought the Planning Commission reviewing this. So we've taken standards from Ventura County, folded those into the regulations here today, and we see that as moving forward, any sort of new situations that arise, we begin to deal with that through a process, if you will, that have been identified within this draft ordinance. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the ordinance, but certainly if the council has any questions.
Okay, then any questions,
Staff.
Bill?
I have a couple, and I know Councilman Haney has a couple. Philosophy, as a person, approving legislation, I always look not for the center of gravity, best possible interpretation, but the most mischief someone could make if they want to, get into the gray area and the confusion and things
Sure.
like that.
Is
That's
it
how I look
straightforward
at
versus?
And so I want to ask you, I'll ask you just 2 or 3 questions at the most, just to illustrate why I think this thing needs more crafting.
Okay.
Okay? For example, exemption from provisions, section 10-17.050. These regulations do not apply to animals used to assist the disabled or registered therapy animals.
Are you in attachment A?
Yeah, attachment A, page 3 of 6.
Yeah, 3 of 6.
Certainly understandable. However, could that be interpreted as meaning humane treatment required?
Wait, where are you? Okay.
Could
Now-
that be interpreted as meaning there's no standard of
Where's
humane
the-
treatment required under a blanket exemption?
Oh,
That's-
yeah.
So you're saying, right, I could see how that,
Yeah.
How it could
Be
be
read.
interpreted.
right.
I got a so what, that's,
There are animal cruelty laws independent of this.
I understand.
Just wanted you to know.
I'm just saying I'm within only the corpus of this, okay? What's a definition of poisonous? Is that if you eat it or some other, there's no definition of what poisonous is.
Okay, so if we were to come up with a definition of poisonous, that would,
Or
Thinking
have
that
it
would-
be as determined at the discretion of a director, for example, because some things can't be defined precisely, okay? And then the last question, before others will ask questions, when the limit of 8 dogs and cats in combination is defined as at any residence. We just had new state law dictating that there's at least 2, if not more, residents required on any parcel. So we may be talking about a small parcel with 16 dogs, and dogs can weigh up to 300 pounds.
No,
I just think we need to think about this a little
Okay,
more.
I'm good.
But there's gonna be discussion,
Just a
right,
minute,
after-
just a minute, Susan. Okay, for a matter of procedure, should we not be going ahead and opening the hearing and hearing
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
public before we get in? This is more of a deliberation. I mean,
I
they're
apologize.
they're excellent questions,
I
okay?
apologize.
Yeah.
I
Okay, are we
apologize.
good on that?
yes, I'm
Okay,
good, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Because
apologize.
I have lots of comments, but I thought we'd wait.
okay,
Okay.
that's right, and that is the normal procedure, so,
I had 2 questions that are direct, they're simple questions, Mayor.
okay, but,
One is pertaining to the number of 8. How do we arrive at 8?
right, so we started with 4. That's where it started. And really what that came from is looking at a couple other different cities and jurisdictions. And it was really 2 and 2. As the Planning Commission and staff looked and researched, it became this discussion of an evolution, if you will, where it became 4 and 4, and then eventually it became, well, why can't we just have the city have 8 of either type, if they choose, or 2 and
okay.
6, or
If-
something
we
within
don't-
that.
That can be all handled under
We'll be
deliberation. We're not
deliberating.
making the
Yeah, I
decision
have
yet, so
some-
why don't we
So
hear
that's
from
just the
public?
background on that. It started at 2 and 2, and then it just kind of morphed from
Right,
there.
okay, and we'll come back to those items. Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and I have, the hearing is now open. I have 3 cards. Steve Quillisi. And Elizabeth, you're on deck. Silva.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and staff. I wanted to assure you that the Planning Commission has done the best job it could over the course of several meetings. And I don't think any of us would have any serious objections if you start modifying here and there in the ordinance, but I think it's important that we have an ordinance that regulates animal keeping. I think one of the things that was not mentioned was that animal keeping had been defined as keeping animals for a commercial purpose. So we're talking riding academies or, I guess,
Kennels?
kennels, right?
breeding.
That would certainly work.
Breeding is commercial.
Yeah. But the animal keeping was non-commercial animal keeping, so.
Oh, are you suggesting we call it non-commercial animal keeping ordinance? Or put that word somewhere in there?
I don't see that as necessary. If it's a business, then it will be regulated by other aspects of the municipal code as we go.
Okay.
But thank you for your time, and I hope that you will pass this ordinance in some form, at least resembling what we tried to put together for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
And thank you I was liaison on planning for a number of these meetings, and they
spent
spent a long time dealing with this, so thank you, Chair Closey.
Okay,
for all your work on
Elizabeth
it.
Silva, you are out there, and David Silva, you're on deck.
Thank you very much to the council and to the planning commission for taking this up. As you know, this is something that affected not only myself and my husband, but also the neighbors surrounding us on Drown. So we feel very strongly that we would like this passed in some form. I do feel that there are some things, and you've already brought up a couple things that are a little ambiguous, and I think the ambiguity needs to be addressed because, as you know, in my own situation, it was ambiguity that prolonged the misery that we faced for the past 3 years when our now thankfully moved neighbor was creating manure piles up to 6 and 7 feet high and having that dry up and blow towards all of our houses and affecting my health. So thank you so much for taking this seriously and for trying to address this and getting it back on the books like it once was, and hopefully giving the enforcement tools that are needed to help when there's situations such as the ones that we've faced and get them resolved quickly and create a more cohesive neighborhood or interaction between neighbors.
Okay, thank you. David?
I just second what my wife says.
Is that a ditto? Ditto.
Guy,
Okay,
you get dinner tonight.
those are all the cards I have, so I'll check with the clerk, be sure. Are those all the cards we have on this item? Okay, then I will call the hearing is now closed and bring it back to council. I cut Susan off.
Yeah.
We'll go
Yeah.
around again, and we'll go
Okay.
to you next.
Well,
Okay,
I
Sue.
did attend all the planning commission meetings because I'm very interested in animal keeping and making sure that, I like the language of humane care of animals. I would say that the part that they struggled with the most is the number of adult dogs and cats, and I feel I'm partly to blame my testimony for the increase. And what I would recommend, so I'm referring now to item attachment A, page 4, item A at the very top, and I know that's going to be our concern. So I thought we would address that first, if that's okay. My recommendation is that, first of all, we separate dogs and cats, because cats are one size in general, whereas dogs go from Great Danes to Chihuahuas. And so a simple solution, just as a starting point, would be just to eliminate the word, no more than a total of 4 adult dogs and eliminate the word or and 4 cats. So that the total would still be 8, but no more than 4 dogs or 4 cats. And that's just the beginning of what I want to say, okay? So I'm not done, okay? And then I would not include even the next part, make that a separate letter. There shall be no limit as to the number of other, I think that should just be B. It doesn't really belong in that, it's a whole different subject.
Okay, shall as we go through this, if there are going to be changes, should we take kind of a straw vote to see whether we've got an issue, so we don't have to go
But-
over everything
Well,
twice?
Yeah.
But I
well,
want to
just-
explain a little bit more about the number of animals.
Okay, well, like,
Okay.
you've already just given us the number, let's go, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Randy?
So this whole ordinance is about health and safety of pets. And then how that health and safety affects our community. So that's, I think, the most important thing we need to recognize. This isn't about telling anyone how many dogs or how many cats or how many big cats or big dogs they can have. It's about what's a healthy environment and a safe environment for a pet. And then how does that contribute to the community as a whole? So I just want to make sure we put that discussion, I believe that's where this discussion is. Regarding this thing on,
I was cut off. I'm not done explaining the number part.
Okay, but
It
just a second.
relates to what Randy said.
Okay, and we'll come back. I want to give everybody an opportunity. So Randy has made a comment. Is there
I
anything
didn't
down at this
finish.
end? If not, we will come back, Souza. Just a second.
Yeah, I'm gonna make an overriding, I absolutely agree with this intent, and we need to move forward at it. I just want to make sure we're careful crafting the language, and I think there's a lot that needs to be done to fix it. And I'll just mention two more comments, and I'll come back. For example, when we define domestic animal in the definition section, you could be interpreted as saying it's got to be housed in a cage or a pen. Domestic animal includes dogs, etc., normally raised as a household pet and housed in a cage or a pen. I don't put my dog in a pen or a cage. Okay? Just little things, the language needs to be carefully looked at.
I
Also,
agree.
things like Part N, on Attachment A, page 5 or 6, the maximum number of fowl must not exceed 18 per lot under single ownership. Well, it's one thing if it's chickens. How about geese or turkey? I've been chased by a gaggle of geese.
I don't know why.
What I'm trying to say is I think maybe the best approach here is that we go, I think I have no problems with the manure management part. I think that it's really important. I think we got to do some crafting of this language.
Okay, well, it sounds like that there are major concerns, or at least enough that we're not going to recraft the ordinance tonight. So Susan, do you want to, would you like to continue the matter and refer it to committee of you and Bill, and you could then make?
Well, I think it's a good opportunity to air out a few more things, and then, are you suggesting we have a committee, Bill and I?
An ad
Well,
hoc.
I'm thinking if we're going to go through it with this kind of change, that's a little bit more than just a minor
Okay.
modification and approval. And it doesn't sound like we're ready to approve it, so I didn't
No,
know.
I'm not ready to approve it, and I'm fully committed to whatever it takes to get
Yes.
it right. I'm 100% committed.
Okay, so we have,
But I wanted to add to the important comments that Randy made about the health and safety of the community. The other purpose of this, if we craft it correctly, is so that we don't dump animals back into the system.
Yes.
And that is why the wording has to be very careful, because there are members of the community that are animal rescuers, they foster animals, and there has to be some way to express that if they have a big house and a large lot, and the animals are well cared for, and it's a temporary situation, that they're not in violation of the law. And perhaps that sounds complicated, but I believe there's a way to do that.
it sounds like you're getting into kind of not necessarily commercial for profit, but much more of a business activity there.
It's
Some of
not
those.
it's not a business, it's just that there are people that occasionally will have, or there'll be a pregnant dog that they adopt, and then there's puppies, and there's no point in dumping these puppies to the Humane Society because they suddenly have more than 4 dogs. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, okay.
So Mayor,
Randy.
Thank you, Susan, for bringing that point out. I guess one of the things that I looked at is, in the event of something like that occurring, I was going to speak to having a permitting process for this type of ordinance. So maybe we start out with the allocation, if you want to call it, or however we would choose to call it, that we're allowed 2 pets per residence, per household. And then if you choose to have more, and you can state your reasons for that, whether you're a rescue person, or whether you're a cat or a dog lover, maybe you're a parakeet lover, I don't know. But whatever it is, come in and file for a simple permit, and that in turn will tell us what you have or what we have, or what, if there is a concern from a neighbor or any other activity in the community, at least we know. So I think that there's a process that will do what you said, as well as provide citizens with the rights to having pets. So I think there's a balance there that can be achieved.
Okay.
And I would like to add to that what you just said. We need to make it clear that this does not override rental agreements, which already limit the number of pets. You know, if you're a renter, you still abide by the agreement. But, you know, if you want to make the community mad, start telling them they can only have 2 dogs and 2 cats. That's all I can tell you, okay? So
Okay,
there are
but the
already-
number and all of that,
Average in
this-
Ojai is already 4 dogs and 4 cats. And that seems,
Ryan, do you want to help me out here with
Wait
a
a minute,
motion?
wait a minute.
No, I'm not going to wait a minute, Souza. You've had plenty of opportunity. We understand your concerns.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
I think that with how complicated and imperfect this law will always be, there needs to be a catch-all that either resides with one of the directors or maybe better at the city manager level.
Yeah.
That says they have an override authority under any conditions
Yeah.
to make sure the health and safety of the animals is number one.
Right.
So that if there's a property with 40 pigs and they're all going to, you know, and they have to go to the Humane Society, that could be dealt with in some other way if necessary.
Right.
I would allow it if it's pigs.
I know, I didn't, you know what, I actually randomly said that and thought, oh, God. James is a proud pig owner, in case anybody wonders.
Yes.
So-
That would
And
be big.
that's
That would-
the one caveat with something like this.
Right,
Let's
right.
not make the law so rigid that we would ever be stuck in
Yeah.
a situation where that had to
Okay, so it's clear that we need a little more crafting on the ordinance, and we've got 2 volunteers, I believe.
And with that, I'd make a motion that we continue this with the committee to look into some of those changes and bring it back with an ad hoc committee
Okay.
of Mr. Wyrick and.
Well, I'll agree with that as long as when it comes back that we have a full discussion on it.
of course.
We will, yes.
That it-
Always
that
have a
it's-
right.
that
We'll
it's-
have another hearing on it when
Yeah.
the thing changes,
Yeah.
so.
That's what I mean. I'm fully committed, whatever it takes, because this
Okay,
has to
so-
last a long time.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any objection to the motion? If not, so ordered, okay. Do we have an idea of when you guys will bring this back so that it doesn't linger?
April meeting?
That sounds safe. If we could do it sooner, we will.
Well, I'm thinking it's already March.
Yeah.
Wait, we're still waiting from this committee for
I
a
know that the
letter
pesticide-
regarding.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
come
didn't want to
on.
bring that up, but
Yeah, right.
you two, we got to put a little.
Okay,
Alicia.
No later than this last meeting in April. How about that?
Yeah, I would think we could do it sooner.
No later than.
Yeah, no later than. I think we can do it
Because
sooner.
it's 10 days before that, you got to get the agenda in.
okay.
Yeah, okay. Is that all right?
Okay, so not later then, but you guys will try to, you could have it
try to
on,
get it
you could have it
quicker.
on the next agenda if you want to get
Yeah.
right,
Try
right
to.
after it.
We'll try
Okay,
to.
great. Okay, matter is, we are now on item number 3.
There's a fly here.
Pickleball sound mitigation options, and,
That's good. A fly.
yes, oh, pardon me, you're right. Yeah, before we go into that.
Yeah, Gail jumping into
What-
public
what-
comment now.
The public
In
comment
7:25.
period is going to be here within a minute or two, so I'm going to go ahead and have public comments now so that we don't get into the other is going to take a little more time. Brian Akins with Teal Row on deck.
Hello, council and staff. Brian Akins. I have my museum hat on. Each time I'm coming, I
But we need to get you some actual hats, so we just don't have to hear that every time. You just actually
I
wear
almost
the
wore
hat.
my Humane Society hat, but I gave it to a dog that was being taken back. It looked lonely.
Could be Brian's rack of hats.
I'll remember
All
that,
right.
though.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
Brian, they're taking your time up, so go ahead.
It's a really short list.
Okay, go.
So, this is from Wendy, our executive director. She said this past weekend the museum had 2 free fun events. One was Friday, Third Friday. And by the way, Third Fridays are fabulous. Having been on the desk there at the museum, the first time I'm like, what? And then having done it several times, it's just wonderful to meet all of the people that don't get out until Friday night and all of the wonderful people with couples, romantic ventures, and families that come and enjoy our town and have a place to go to. So kudos to them. Anyway, we had music by Babette and Bob. Not sure who they are, but 73 people came within the 2-hour event. Very nice. Sunday was a family fun day that we're doing on a monthly basis. That was from 1 to 3, featured 4 fast crafts for children and their adults. 83 people attended that. I remember when we used to have events on Sunday afternoon, and the volunteers attended. So that's a big step up.
83.
83. 73 Friday night, 83 people Sunday night. The other big thing that's going on, of course, is our exhibit, 22 Miles, Ojai Valley Landscapes, is up through April 19th. Somewhere about when you two are going to finish your ad hoc meeting. The beautiful exhibit is very well received by both locals and visitors. The paintings are by fine landscape artists from throughout Southern California who painted the valley specifically for this exhibition. So keep that in mind. All of these people from fabulous cities throughout the central part, southern part of California came and painted our town and its environment, including the skate park. Interesting to see how they see the wonderful valley that we have and how they see the richness, enjoy that maybe we're not taking the time to enjoy. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your support to the Ojai Valley Museum.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, Teal, you're up, and Sherry Ann Kate, you're on deck.
Hello, Council. I thank you for your service. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you very much.
This is not a tourist go home talk, and I've been batting back and forth with myself. Do I do this? Do I not? Do I do this? Do I not? And I'm here because I'm a concerned citizen. I live in the county, and North Signal Street on the weekends is beyond believable. And again, this is not a complaint, it's a concern. The cars go down both sides of the street, almost halfway down Signal. And if something were to happen, let me just take you on a little ride. You're from someplace else, and you want to go into the mountains, and it's beautiful. And you're on your phone, a GPS, how to get to Ojai. You go up Signal, Dogleg, jag up to the left, head up the hill. Now, there's cars on both sides of the street halfway up the hill. So you're looking for Pratt Foothill Trailhead. In the county, no problem. Take a left at the sign. Go down to the trailhead. There's no place to park. All the parking places are filled. There's also guys on I want to say radioactive cars, but they're called radio-controlled trucks that the guys do down there in the trailhead. So there's tracks all the time on the trail. And so the car, you're still on your GPS because you're wondering, my parking place at the trailhead's taken. So, okay, we'll go up to the Shelf Road gate, take a left. Dang, there's cars all the way, both sides of the street, even in the part that is no parking in front of the residences. Try to turn around at the gate, make a 4, 5, 6 point turn at the gate, looking at the phone, wondering where to go. Go halfway down, Signal, park, and walk up. Now, I forgot to mention the baby strollers, the dogs.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, I'm renting the trucks, the little radio-controlled trucks. There's people on bikes, and there's a lot of people. And I'm not complaining. I'm just concerned, because if something were to happen, it wouldn't be a good thing. I took a picture on Valentine's Day. There's 2 tour buses here, and the truck in the middle is my truck. And I'll send them to you in email because they're easier to see. There's also a bicyclist. I only got 1 picture. I'm not doing statistics of every weekend taking pictures or anything because I don't have that time, but I could, and I know that our neighbors would too. And I also notice a lot of our neighbors are moving away, so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And here's the picture.
Is there a particular time that it's the worst, so that if someone wanted
It's
to go
weird.
sample it?
It's weird because I said on Sunday, a friend was coming up, I said, give me feedback on what you think. 10 o'clock Sunday, she was up there. And I went out and there were no cars out there. But then I went out at 1 and the cars were halfway down Signal on both sides. So it's like hit and miss.
Yeah, I can verify that what she says is no exaggeration whatsoever. It's become a nightmare up there.
And I didn't get signatures from neighbors because I didn't have time. And I would take another 2 weeks to get signatures from neighbors. And I didn't want to take the time because it just felt, like I said, batting back and forth. Do I go and mention? Do I not? Do I, don't I? And I had to be here tonight.
Yeah,
So
you're doing a public service.
thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Teal.
Can I ask a question? This is North Signal?
That's right below, is it 1155?
I know, but it is North Signal. Tour buses are parking.
Okay,
on North-
if you want to know, ask Jerry Jacobs at the Land Conservancy. He ended up talking to the people that were on the bus. What they did, this year it was much, much better. Last year on President's Day, it was a fiasco on North Signal. But this year, asking the resident at that house, she said it was so much better this year because, well, for one thing, they sold their house, and they unloaded on Gridley and picked up on Signal on that. And she said the only thing that was horrible was that they were idle, those buses idled for half an hour. But she said everybody was lined up single file, like they had it all together. They had been probably warned or something. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But they were single file with a megaphone, get on the bus, and they just got on the bus and left, rather than unloading and picnicking and the whole thing.
I have one question, Mayor.
Randy?
I don't want to put you on the spot. You
Yeah,
don't
it's
have to
okay.
answer this if you're uncomfortable, but you haven't asked for anything. You've made us aware of something, but it's a trailhead. Are you saying that?
It's not the
that-
trailhead that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the city street of Signal.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, what I'm hearing is there's not enough parking. Is that the concern?
My concern, my request, if I were to make a request, and please forgive me, those neighbors of mine that are watching, I would request a red line all the way down one side of Signal. One side for parking, the other side for whatever you have going. Horses too, horses are being ridden too. It's like there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and at least if something were to happen and the cars were parked on one side, the cops or the fire guys or something could come up and also have a turnaround up at the end somehow. At Shelf, it's like a 5-point turn.
Right. So why I'm asking that is, James, is that county property or is that our property?
Ours.
The Signal Street portion is ours.
All the way
Signal
up.
Street.
Yeah, they're all-
I understand that. I'm talking about at the top.
It's ours.
It's ours.
All of
for
that is
sure.
ours.
Yep.
So we've created this issue that first of all, if a fire truck had to get up there, a fire truck could not turn around.
You can ask any of my neighbors, they could not get up and turn around.
Not with the parking. I think
So that's
without-
the,
Okay,
that's the
guys,
concern.
Yeah.
we're not going to solve it tonight.
We'll
Thank
put
but
this on the agenda.
yeah,
Thank you.
the city manager is now tuned in. He'll work with the Public Works Department and come back and let us know
To build another
what
trailhead.
possible.
Why I asked that question, Mayor, is I always thought that everything at a certain point was county. That we took them to that spot and then county maintained or had jurisdiction. But if it's ours, we need to rectify
Okay,
it.
okay.
It gets
Sherry,
county to
okay.
decide where Teal is.
Sherry Ann Kate, you are up, and Christine Golden, you are on deck.
Valentine's Day weekend was incredible.
So I'm here representing OCCA, which is Ojai Citizens for Clean Air. It was founded by Dr. Steve Colomay, Michael Shapiro, myself, and about 6 or 7 other people. We have quite a few more members now. We want to thank you again for passing the gas-powered small engine ordinance, and especially thank our city manager, James Vega. I'm very impressed with the outreach that you're already taking care of. So everybody gets on the same page about this. We're already noticing a lot of battery-powered machines in our neighborhoods, thank goodness. So we're really pleased about this. The other thing that we want to thank you for is the letter. I think it was consent calendar letter I that you sent to the county regarding the deficiencies in the general plan. So we're all about air quality Ojai Citizens for Clean Air, we're not going away just because this ban on the machines was passed. We intend to stay active and continue to stand up for our air quality in the Ojai Valley. So thank you again very much for what you've done.
Okay. Thank you. Christine?
Greetings and salutations to all of you. I'm here to make an announcement from the Arts Commission, and it's a very exciting announcement. We have launched our first ever public art funded art project throughout the city, and it's for Ojai Valley artists, and we call it the Paint Box Project. And we have identified 4 utility boxes that belong to the city of Ojai, and we worked with Public Works, with Greg Grant, and with everyone else that we needed to work with, and came up with an application and a process. And so this has gone out. It's on our website. Anyone watching can just go to artsojai.org, www.artsojai.org, and you'll find the application and you'll find a project description. The proposals from artists are due March 23rd, 2020. Then there will be, as according to the Public Art Ordinance, a public art jury, which has been selected by the Arts Commission, that will review the applications and pick the winners, the proposal winners, if any, to paint those boxes and turn those utility boxes into works of art. So I was hoping that Jeremy would be able to get our flyer up on the screen, but probably that isn't going to work. I have a feeling he's over there struggling with it. But at any rate, this flyer is all over town, and it announces the project. And so we've just put a couple hundred copies here, there, and everywhere, including right here at City Hall. And also it's posted on the website. Any questions?
Are you trying to take
Any questions?
Well, thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, that is the end of the public comment period, and we will now go to agenda item number 3, which is the pickleball sound mitigation options. Mr. Vega.
There you go.
Thank you. And I just have a brief staff report just to kind of summarize the issue. We in December of last year, the city paved, cleaned up, and revitalized the damaged and existing tennis court at the Libby Park campus directly behind City Hall, which is just outside our back door here. The city repaved the courts and had plans to install temporary nets and start play while we are waiting on striping, which will take place during the spring. The pickleball club has played daily since January 11th when the courts were opened. They typically play from 9 to 10:30 a.m. and 4 to 5:30 p.m. on weekdays, with but more hours on Saturday. They're typically playing the typical 8 to 5 o'clock or so on Saturdays. The city had received 2 complaints about the noise related to the campus. As of the drafting of this report, we have received 4 total complaints now. We received a couple additional after this was printed. Staff has measured the noise levels from about 20 feet away. We found that the decibel level increased from about 55 to no higher than 60 decibels, typically around 58, 59 decibels. And on attachment B to the packet, a decibel chart shows that this is typically in the category of laughter type noise, which is about 60 decibels as well. It should be noted, though, that the popping noise is distinctive, and several of the complaints have noted that it's a distinctive popping sound. Because there were several concerns about noise lasting all day and going into the night, we were working on installing signage noting limited park hours, which is included in the packet as well and is one of the recommendations. We're recommending establishing hours that ensure that the play doesn't go all night. We've heard a lot of different recommendations from different groups on the hours. We had recommended 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. as a reasonable amount of hours, but that's something council could direct otherwise. We've also investigated low noise equipment and wall and fence sound buffers, and those are things we could investigate further. We have not recommended installing any sound buffers at this time.
Okay, I have a number of cards here, so how many do we, did you count these?
Oh, did I not put a
Oh, did you?
There's
Oh, 11, yeah, 11 cards, okay, well, hopefully we won't repeat ourselves too many times, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the regular 3 minutes if you have something that you feel that needs to be added into the conversation. And let's begin. Ron McCray, you're up first. And Kristen Bell, you are on deck. And for the benefit of the audience, for those of you who don't attend regularly, there are lights up here, and it's a 3-minute allocation, so that means we've got over probably close to 45 minutes worth of testimony before the council engages. So I appreciate it if everybody will kind of stay within their 3 minutes.
Yeah, Brown McRae. I live on the other side of the fence over there. This is the first one here that I wanted to show you that I've been over there for 25 years. And this is a sign they put 25 years ago that the sponsors and the people who contributed to the demonstration garden, and you'll see my name on there. When I first came to Ojai, I was in our gardening service, and I contributed to this demonstration garden. And I've been there for like 25 years, and I was sort of hoping to be staying there for another 25 years, but it doesn't look like that with this pickleball club. I know they're having fun, but that popping noise you were talking about goes on all day, and pretty soon it'll be till 8 o'clock at night, and I cannot go home. When it starts, I leave. I can't go home. You don't really get the picture of what it sounds like when you're trying to relax in your house. I could show you what you should do is go online, pickleball noise problems. Nearby residents complain. You can get that on YouTube. You can get that on Google or your search engine. It says pickleball noise problems. It has little videos of people complaining about this. Some of the little blogs they have here, for instance. I have neighbors who have developed health issues directly related to pickleball exposure, a stroke, and a nervous disorder. I have one here these are a whole bunch of people that have this in their neighborhood, and that's what they complain. The issue has become so heated in some communities that there have actually been lawsuits over pickleball noises. In Newport Beach, a woman has filed lawsuits claiming that the sport played within 300 feet from her home is raucous and disturbing, and she cannot live a normal life. And I just go online and find out what you approved over there. It's fine, they're having fun, but how do you expect anybody to live there? I wanted to be there another 25 years, but I can't see how that's possible with that noise every day. Every time it goes off, I have to leave the house. I can't go home and with that sounding. Now, I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people, neighbors and everybody else, but I asked a lot of people showed them what it was and told them to go that. I have a petition here I handed you. There's over 80 people who signed this. And there's the petition that they do not want a pickleball game in the demonstration garden. It's supposed to be quiet. It's a nice place to go to relax. You don't want this banging and popping all the time. I know they're having fun, yes, but they could go over to Soul Park or Matilaha place over there. There's no way that they do not want to use a smaller ball or do anything, because that would totally ruin their game. They've already heard them say that at the Park and Recreation. They would destroy their game. It'd be like playing tennis with a ping pong paddle. You can't. They're not going to minimize it. They don't want it. Ask them, if they will change it. I can't live with that, and neither can my neighbors and anybody. Not only the value of the property, but there's only one way to solve this thing. It's just to tell them to go someplace else and play their game.
Okay, thank you. Kristen Bell, you are up, and Alan Bell, you are on deck.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Bell. I'm a resident of Ojai. In fact, I live next to Sarasota Park, next to the baseball field there. I've said to you before how much I appreciate you designating a place for us to play here in Ojai and what a personal difference it's made for me. Tonight, I'd like to focus on the tremendous gift that you've given to the community by providing us a place to play. Ever since we moved from the Matilaha courts, the program has become much more vibrant, not in a raucous way, but we've brought people together. Every time I go to play, the courts are full, and people are not just enjoying themselves, but enjoying great health benefits, getting us off the couch, active and socializing. So I just want to thank you for that. I am concerned about the sound. We don't want to be a nuisance to anybody. So thank you for the research in the sound study. I'm glad that we were within the decibel limits. However, I'm still committed to doing what we can to mitigate the sound. And for example, more than happy to play with the green paddles. Easy to do, and it would make a difference. I'm also hopeful that someday there will be a technology solution out there. You've heard of noise canceling headphones. Right now there's no technology that can cancel ambient noise, but there are people working on it. And I'm continuing to look into it, and if there are any engineers around, I would be more than happy to partner with them and look for more solutions. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Alan?
Can I ask a question, Kristen? Sure. May I ask a question, Mayor?
Okay.
With these paddles, what do you think is being used right now? Because I read about that. What are people using now?
You know what? Tim has data on that. I think it's a mix.
Okay.
Some of us have the green and some of us have the.
Thank you.
Okay, Alan Bell, you're up, and is it Pella Roto? Doctor? You're on deck. I'm sorry, I can't read and if I could read it, I probably can't pronounce it. My apologies.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. As my wife said, we live on 908 East Aliso, right next to Sarasota. We also experience, noises from a park, so we can empathize with the neighbors' issues. There's two issues that I wanted to touch on quickly. Was the city parks hours. Looking online, there's 8 parks in our constituency. It's hard to find the hours online, but looking at it, it looks the garden is dawn to dusk on one sign, and on another sign it's 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I guess it's Libby park hours. The skate park is dawn to 10 p.m. I know Sarasota shuts down at 10 p.m. as well, because we live next to it. So I was just trying to get a feel what the city has for its parks and how open they are. And as James has said, you guys suggested 6 p.m., which was my next point. As a working adult, I don't get off work till 5, so limiting my playtime to that, however fast I can get to the park from work after 5 to 6 is a little limiting. Not impossible, but it's there. So that was one of my also concern. The other was the second recommendation for us was to go back to Matilaha. I don't believe that is runs counter to what the council had mandated for the ad hoc and the council to find a permanent home for us, which they had done. And I don't believe we can get back to, unless the council wants to move us back to Matilaha and go negotiations with them. So I didn't know if that was something that would happen. Right now, it's temporary. It's never going to be permanent. It's chalk lines. We have to move them that way. And the last is the actual noise mitigation, which my wife had touched on. The paddles, I think, are an easy solution for us. The wall solution, there's a wall there. It's just kind of short. So the only way I think you guys can solve that would be to increase its height, and I don't know if that's within your budget and or codes. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I respond quickly to the, just real quick, to the Matilaha issue? Matilaha has been shut down to the pickleball people.
Not entirely, no.
330 days out of the year, they have pretty much shut that down. They've locked them out.
Okay, well,
So,
that'll come out.
I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay. And is it Selena?
Dr. Sirena Pellarolo, thank you. Pellarolo.
Pela-
Pellarolo, it's an Italian name.
Yeah.
Italian Argentinian.
Buongiorno, yeah.
He's Johnny Johnson. He doesn't.
Actually, I'm a non-nono, but on my mother's side, but I have trouble. Ask Steve Kulici. I keep wanting to call him Kulici.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I would like to appreciate the report, the staff report for sound mitigation for the pickleball courts. I gave a statement in the last meeting, and I said how much I appreciate the pickleball game and the community. And I was wondering, and I have not done my research, is there a difference between the sound regulations in a park and in a residential area? Because I live in North Montgomery, close to the mountains, in a very quiet place, in a guest house. And 10 feet away from me, the neighbors were building a pool, and they were using heavy machinery at 7 o'clock in the morning. I called the police, and they said that they had the right to do that until 10 p.m. So I was wondering if there's a discrepancy between parks' sound regulations and the residential areas.
Okay. You want to answer that now or later?
We'll answer it after.
Okay,
Thank you.
fine. Thank you for the question. Julia, is that Bruns? It is. Okay, Julia, come on down. And Lori Johnson. See, I got that one, Johnson. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And you got mine,
Yeah,
too.
mine has a T in it, but at least I'm close. Okay, go. Yeah.
Great. I'm Julia Bruns. I'm a realtor and a pickleball player, and I actually got together with 4 other realtors, and we were going to talk about value, but it sounds like this is more about the noise. But I had done a little research. There are so many new senior communities mostly, that are putting in pickleball courts into the common areas. So, I'm not hearing about a lot of the medical issues, but I just think that it really adds value. In fact, I don't know if anyone's been down to the new Wagon Wheel community. They have 1,100 rental units and about 550 sale units, and they're putting in pickleball courts. And of course, I don't know, it seems to me like tennis is a similar game, and we've got a lot of residential places that sell for a lot of money right adjacent to the Libby Park courts. And so it seems like it would be reasonable to limit hours, and if we can use special balls or paddles to make it less annoying, we're happy to do that. But otherwise, I think this is just a fabulous location, sandwiched between the Ojai City Hall and the police department and the community gardens, and we're so grateful to be here and have this spot and have the fun. And I think it actually increases the values, in my opinion. So thank you for listening to me tonight.
Okay, well, thank you for participating. Lori, you're up, and Beverly Park Sherbo is on deck.
Greetings. I'm going to read because I'm more nervous than everybody else.
Don't be nervous.
Thank you for your support of pickleball courts in Ojai. It's appreciated. We're excited to have dedicated lines and boundaries for real court play, something we've not yet had. So I'm looking forward to that. I imagine the Smith-Hobson family is also delighted to see the court being cared for and used as well. Regarding hours of play, I'm one anxious to be able to play after work, getting off work at 5, and when the clock changes and the sun's out later, it'd be nice to play in the evenings. And exercise, have community unity, and some laughter. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Beverly, you're up, and Mary Wargo, you are on deck.
Good evening, everyone.
I'm representing the Ojai Children's Memorial Garden today. We haven't spoken in front of you before about the pickleball court. I guess we were concentrating on too much to get this garden going. Anyway, I apologize to any of the pickleball people here. I don't mean to disparage you at all. I just have to let the city council know our opinions. The board and our supporters and volunteers have asked me to speak to you tonight. Our community has a continuing need for a serene and quiet place to reflect and remember our children, our friends, and the people of our community. We have worked for more than a year and a half now on finding that space to create an inclusive children's memorial garden. The children's garden at the Y was inappropriate because of vehicle noise and space. The Rotary Community Park was inappropriate because of vehicle noise and space. Clough Community Park was inappropriate because of vehicle noise and space. Libby Park was inappropriate because of the noise from events and constant visitors. But at the end of February, we found a neglected English garden beside the City Hall. We thought it would be the perfect secluded site to create the Children's Memorial Garden. We started immediately speaking with the city regarding the necessary steps to achieve our goal. At the end of May, we were given permission to start negotiations. The City Council was delighted and grateful someone was going to restore and maintain the garden pond. At that time, we did not have concerns about the noise from the proposed pickleball court. We believed that a pickleball was a tennis-type game without continual social chatter where you played with a hard bat and a softball. We also believed that there would be only one court used by 2 to 4 people at a time. How much noise could that create? We also believed that when or if a committee reviewed the request for the pickleball court, they would understand our needs for quiet. We were mistaken. When people started to play with 4 courts and up to 16 players and spectators, we soon learned we had a big problem. We know we have a big problem. Tonight's report states, and I'm paraphrasing, although noise was discussed as a potential issue, ultimately, the area used for pickleball was buffered by the Children's Memorial. I'm a little upset. So now our community memorial garden is being used as a buffer so that pickleball members can continue to play. We have worked so hard and have spent so much time and our own money creating a secluded garden where our community can sit and find some respite from our busy world. We believe that the pickleball courts should be moved to a more appropriate sports venue. We believe that the gardens should remain the gardens. Thank you for your consideration.
Mary, you are up, and Judy DeVore, you're on deck.
Okay, I have a letter, I think, from Karen Quimby. She wanted me to read this. I think she mailed something in to everybody, but she specifically couldn't be here today, and she wanted me to read this. It says, to Ojai City Council, I am writing today to comment on the new pickleball courts located on the City of Ojai property at City Hall. I am out of town during the City Council meeting at which this issue will be discussed and have asked someone to read this letter for me in my behalf. My parents, Robert and Phyllis Quimby, own the duplex located directly across the street from the pickleball courts with the address of 408 South Ventura Street, Units A and B. I am submitting these comments on behalf of my parents, the owners of the property, and myself. I and my parents were dismayed to learn that the pickleball courts were approved and sited across the street from our rental apartments with no notice to either owner or tenants. While we certainly support the ability of people to engage in this increasingly popular sport, we are also highly aware of the significant noise issues that this sport creates. as is well documented in neighborhood disputes across the country. Our tenants have contacted us with deep concern that the noise from these new courts, which could have up to 16 players at one time, will permanently disrupt their peace and quiet and their quality of life at the home. While our primary concern is with, It says, while our primary concern is with the health and well-being of our valued long-term tenants, we are also concerned with the diminishment of our property values if potential new owners or new tenants would avoid purchase or renting because of the significant noise issue. We call on the City of Ojai to immediately find a solution to this issue that accommodates both residents who just want to live as they have been and the pickleball enthusiasts who want to practice their sport. We understand that the courts are available at both Matilla Junior High as well as Soul Park, which is a solution that may meet the needs of both the players and the residents. We urge the city to halt the play on the courts on their property immediately and work out this reasonable solution for play on other courts. Sincerely, Robert and Phyllis Quimby and Karen Quimby. I'm the tenant that is in that location of their property right across from here. And I tell you, this is noisy. It is massively noisy. And it's not just a couple hours a day. It's that they get there at 8:39 in the morning. It's sometimes till 11:30 noon. I get a 2-3 hour break apiece. It starts again at 3:30 till 5:30 or so. Sundays all day. It's massively noisy. That sound radiates through my residence to the back patio. I have to keep my doors and windows closed. I have to put on a loud air filter to filter out that banging noise. It's a high intensity noise. It's not like a car driving by. It's not like a motor running. It is a banging noise over and over and over again. I don't think anybody in here would want to live across the street from that. It's that bad in that area. And I don't know, if you're thinking it's not that much noise, you're mistaken, because it is. It's a lot in some areas. And yeah, there's a lot of retirement places that have put them in. And there's also been a heck of a lot of complaints over it, and even a lawsuit in some cases because of that noise. So I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how long I can stay there with that noise. I know the property owners are concerned about it, and a lot of other people in the area too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Judy DeVore, you're up, and Tim Kraut, you're on deck.
Hi. I don't want to be redundant, but I am going to echo the comments of two preceding speakers. The first one is Ron. I live right across the street, and the noise is it's unnerving. I have a little piece of patio next to my apartment. When the weather's nice, I go out, and my practice was to go out and have coffee in the morning. That's out. I would go out in the afternoon, maybe have friends over in the afternoon, have a glass of wine, entertain a little bit. It's just a terrible sound. It's a thwop, it's high-pitched, it's redundant. It has changed the way I have to do things. And it's really, I pay a lot of rent over there, and I always think, well, part of it is I have a little patio. Well, I don't have that anymore. I also want to comment on Beverly's comments. I do a little volunteer work over behind the adult daycare at Help of Ojai. So I'm over there a lot, and the other day I was shown the area where the memorial garden is going in. And it's lovely, and it's being rehabbed and all that. And of course, I'm hearing the games going on. And again, like everyone said, pickleball is great, and we all want everybody to be healthy and have fun. But I'm very, very sad. And standing there, it was the first thing I thought was, if I wanted to come here to remember a loved one, I would be in a contemplative mood. I would certainly be in a quiet mood, reflective. And I couldn't do that in that space. It's just impossible. It's completely incompatible uses. What's disturbed me the most is learning, which I did not know before tonight, because I never saw this report, although I'd come to the desk earlier to get materials on what had been done about pickleball, and I never got the report. I did not know that the council had approved of Beverly's group's project for the memorial garden before pickleball came up, and that the idea that the Memorial Garden would be a buffer for this sound. I guess buffer for the people in City Hall, that's where it's sitting between, is really heartbreaking and shocking. And so the decision to allow a very noisy sport, albeit a healthy one and a fun one, is a bad idea. There are other places. I don't know what happened at Matilaha. Again, I'm not privy to all that information. I know Libby Park has lots of courts. The tennis people don't want to give them up. There's Soul Park. This place, this spot, I see you're going to discuss mitigation efforts. I don't know what mitigation steps have been taken or even considered, but I would urge you to consider the best mitigation would be to move it elsewhere and maybe get back with Matilaha and try to get it back over there. Mary's right. This time, the hours that someone mentioned, 8 to 10 in the morning, that's not correct. It's not correct. It's most of the morning, and then 3 o'clock onward. And then, of course, when the sun's out, it's going to go till, 8 o'clock, 8:30. So I hope that the council will do the right thing and allow that garden to proceed and have it serve its intended purpose. Thank you.
Okay. Tim, you're up, and Randy Roth, you're on deck.
I think we started the pickleball.
Good evening, council, staff, sheriff. This report that was put out by the city manager concerning pickleball sound mitigations, I think it states a lot. It says a lot for the decibel meter that was used out there on the courts. The court use, the court decibel level, when it's not used, is between 55 and 56 dBs. When that court is being used, he's got down here that it's between 59 and 60. So you got a 3 to 4 point increase in the dB level. That's very little to me. What I'd like to know is what noise is being generated when no one is there. What is that sound that they're receiving, that 55 to 56 dBs? Also, on his report, with the decibel noise level, he's got laughter at 60 dBs. I hope that that's something that people realize is a good thing, to have laughter, and that's at 60 dBs. The zoning dictates usage for property, and I think that the zoning on this property would dictate the usage of what's being used out there. This activity, the zoning would allow this activity, just like at Libby Park or any other park in the city. Lastly, my last comment is on, there's been a lot of talk about Matilaha. I've been privy to all the meetings. I've been there and spoke to the administration downtown. I filled out the papers, the application, paid the fees, and the required insurance that was required of us before we could use those courts at Matilaha. 2029, this past spring of 2029, I got a call from the principal at Nordhoff at Matilaha, and he said we needed to vacate the premises for 7 weeks. The year prior to that, spring of 2018, there was no question or request of me to vacate the premises for 7 weeks. They had asked me to vacate 1 week for the tennis tournament, and during that time they used the courts 1 day, like the past year, 2019. So tonight I'd ask each one of you this weekend to drive at each school within the OUSD and see if you can access the premises. See if you can go on the field and use the facilities. See if you can go to Nordhoff and use the basketball court or the tennis courts, or go to Matilla Hall and see if you can play tennis there. It's under lock and key. And it's the same way with the elementary schools, San Antonio, Topa, Marimani, and Miners Oaks. So that's been my experience, and that's the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, Randy? And Skip, you're on deck. If Skip's out there anywhere.
Last night, I stood and watched as 16 people played pickleball. And I think if you had been there with me, you would have smiled. Because what you would have seen is 9 women and 7 men with a full range of athletic ability having a wonderful time. The opportunities that we have for connections within this community are limited. But what Tim has created is an opportunity for an awful lot of people who otherwise would not know each other to create friendships and to have a really good and healthy time together. So I want to thank everybody at the city and at the Parks and Recreation for creating this opportunity for us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, Skip Schickman? Oh. Howdy.
Howdy. Thank you all for doing the job you do. I don't know how you do it. I started refreshing the demonstration garden about 7 weeks ago, and I've missed one day in 7 weeks. I was also started the beginning of that garden back in the early 80s. I laid some rocks with some other people and began what was there before the big flush of the early 90s. So I've watched that place for quite some time, and it's a delightful area, and I really love what we're attempting to do there. Demonstrating community is probably the best thing you could do, in a garden especially. So when I got there, the pickleball people were playing, and I certainly personally have not found it annoying or disturbing sound. I expect community, especially a diverse community, to have things going on. And I'm quite delighted by the vitality and action that I'm feeling when I'm working that garden. That garden has been in lethargy and dissonance for far too long. It's a very valuable, wonderful place. And to get some life there, and to get more people flowing through there, is something that I think would serve the whole community well. So, you know, I know that it's a change in the neighborhood, having the staccato jazz drumming going on, and the laughter of people having fun. And if one is used to living in the cell, where there is no sound, anything can be jarring. When I want quiet, I go inside my cell and be quiet. So I personally don't find that sound difficult to handle for 6 or 7 hours a day. I don't find that they extend their hours. Actually, I've been quite surprised at how little time they are there in the 7 weeks that I've been in that garden for 5 or 6 hours a day. So I just needed to come and say my say and give you my opinion about what's happening there, because I am in the middle of it.
Thank you, Skip. Appreciate your observation. Dale Hansen. And that's all the cards I have, unless there is some.
Good, I speak last. Okay. I just want to say, not to dispute one of the previous speakers, I called our superintendent of schools, Tiffany Morris, and asked her about Matilaha. She said there are only 6 weeks out of the year they can't use Matilaha. Now, I don't know where he's getting that, and as far as, I asked her, I said, so is it an insurance problem? Is it a little, is it liability? She said, no. They can use Matilah, and of course, we know they can use Soul Park. It's a long drive. But I appreciate the fact that everyone has fun. We all like to have fun. But I could not in good conscience have fun when I know that I'm disturbing the people around me. I don't know how you can do that. To me, that just goes against good sense. And the people there are disturbed. For the people who want to talk about, it doesn't bother me, well, that's good, but you don't go home to it. And wearing earplugs in your home, you got to wear earplugs to have peace in your home, that's crazy. I'm sorry, I think that the pickleball court has to be removed. I don't know any other way around, because the people that live there can't bear it. And I would invite any of you to have it in your neighborhood. Want it in your neighborhood? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Okay, that's all the cards, so we will now take it back to the council for whatever deliberation you wish to have this evening.
I have a question. I'd like to ask Tim when it's appropriate.
Okay, we'll start down here and we'll come, okay, go, Bill.
Oh,
Am I starting or Bill?
yeah.
Bill says, is
Okay.
deferring to you.
All right, well, I'd like to start by acknowledging that for the people that live there, it's obvious that the problem is real, and it's a problem that is expressed in countless communities. I don't think that we should deny that the problem exists. I think we need fundamentally to acknowledge that there is a problem, and speaking for myself, I now feel that I did not do my due diligence in really investigating the impact of the that popping noise on the neighbors, and for that I apologize. I really do. I would like to. I'm open, and I also want to say this is not about. We all here understand what a valuable asset pickleball is to the community. There's no argument on that, and that people love it. That's a growing sport. It adds health and joy to the community. There's no denying that. So from my perspective, it feels to me, unless we can find, if we did consider any mitigation, to me that would be strictly a trial period. And I am inclined to move into the direction, it may take some time to transition. I use the word transition. I don't feel like it should be abrupt. I think it's winter hours. I think there should be some limit so that the residents immediately have some relief. Something should be done so they can count on some peace and quiet at certain times. And then do some fact finding about Matilah, other places. I just don't see any way around it. I mean, we have a problem. From my perspective, there's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Bill?
It would be appropriate to ask Tim a question about paddles for that.
Sure.
Tim, there was a long report here in the staff about the paddles, and there was a long list of paddles that I think Sun City had approved, and then a list of paddles that weren't approved. How much of a difference is there? Do we have any sense of or measure or metric of the difference in sound level between the approved or available paddles and non-approved paddles that still maintain the integrity of play? Do we have any sense of that?
Yeah, there is some that have a different sound. The original pickleball paddle is made out of wood. Those you don't see very often anymore.
Okay.
So the paddle has progressed to a heavier paddle, a thicker paddle, a quieter paddle.
Mm-hmm.
The paddles mentioned on the list from staff, right now, the majority of those paddles are being used out here on that court.
Okay. Do you have any objection if we actually put a rule in about having approved paddles as at least as an attempt at mitigation?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's just a question. I have some comments, but there might be other questions.
Other questions?
Yeah. I'd just like to correct one record. There was I know Beverly said something about the timing between memorandum of understanding and the plans for the pickleball court resurfacing. I'm not sure, I was wondering if I could ask the city manager the exact timing of that, because I thought that the plans for pickleball occurred before the memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion because there's a lot of dates we left out of the report because we didn't want to keep going further and further back. The report noted that on August 27th, the city council received a pickleball committee recommendation, an ad hoc committee recommendation. But my recollection is that the city had been approached for pickleball in March, and I believe we were approached for the Children's Memorial in May.
Okay.
And the first time I met with the Children's Memorial Group, I did notify them that pickleball was in process, and they noted that they weren't sure how many courts, but they were aware of the pickleball
Right, so it'd be an
courts.
issue of the scale.
Yeah.
And also, do we have any, if I could ask one more question to the city manager?
I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
I commented at the time, I remember distinctly, that we were mixing what was looking to be the Children's Memorial with this pickleball court. And I asked specifically at that time whether the low noise equipment was a viable option because it had been presented to us. And at that point, there was no objection. I know some things have changed, but there's no doubt in my mind that this council contemplated the Children's Memorial in the same breath and timeline, and when they were well aware that the pickleball was what we were installing over there as well.
Just one more question, if I may?
Bill?
Thank you for that. There are, in terms of the area of mitigation, there are consultants that specialize in sound. They're acoustic consultants. Do we have any sense of what it might cost? And I'm not talking about, just this situation, but anyway, all of our city recreation activities and in terms of improving the quality of the neighborhoods. Do you have any sense of what it would cost to hire a specialty consultant for this kind of study?
I would expect, depending on what we wanted them to look at, for just this site, maybe we could probably get somebody for around maybe $5,000, but to look at a broader scope, between $5,000 and $10,000.
5 to 10 would be what it would cost for, rather than just staff that are not specialized
Right.
consultants, what it would cost to get a specialized consultant in. Okay.
Randy?
Are you done?
Yeah, thank you.
So alls I look at is when Susan was speaking, I was just thinking of diversity and the diversity of our community and how change is difficult for groups of people to accept or to acknowledge or to assimilate to. If you take a look, let's take a look at the fair or the food court, some people call it that, or some people call the farmer's market, or some people have a lot of different names for what goes downtown on Sunday in a public parking lot. And the impacts that has on that entire community. You can't find a place to park on Aliso, you can't find a place to park here, you can't. So when that was initiated, I'm sure there was a tremendous amount of pushback. But guess what? There was also a tremendous amount of recognition that this is a diverse community and that this community is asking for this to happen, and therefore it did. And we've figured it out and gotten along from, I don't know, since its existence. So, we didn't come here and the farmer market was here. We were here, then the farmer market came to us. So we have the same thing with this. In this diverse community, we have a new activity that's being presented to us in a park with multiple uses of that facility. So we have a senior citizen aspect to it. We have a garden, which I can't agree more with the gentleman that spoke, that's run down and just in complete disarray. We now have a memorial garden, which is incredible. We now have a pickleball area, which is just as important and just as diverse and just as important to this community. So I just can't, I just have a sense that if we work together, we can mitigate some of this noise, but more importantly is we can create an environment for the diverse community that we represent so that we can all participate in it. So that's what I say.
You have something else you
Oh,
wanted to
yeah,
say?
I just want to comment. I don't see a comparison between a Sunday farmer's market that's only held on Sunday from 8 to 1 and an activity that goes on all day long. In the summer hours, it's going to go on at night, just when people would come home and want some peace and quiet. The only way I can see this working is if all the homes that are affected are, the residents would all be pickleball players. So you can sell your house to a pickleball enthusiast. Okay, that's the one far-fetched solution. But speaking of the examples you gave, if the hours were severely restricted and people could count on peace and quiet, that might be a middle path, restricting the hours of use. But there's not going to be a solution that I can see where everyone's 100% happy unless the noise mitigation works. And when I've heard about the walls, and that would be a factor in the Ojai heat, if you start putting up walls, that affects the airflow and it's going to be really hot. That is a problem.
Yeah, I don't want to presuppose what a specialist acoustic engineer
Yeah.
might tell us. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to get a
But
specialist to do that.
Well, can I talk to that real quick? All I was talking to was the fact that something happened in our community that wasn't there before, and it came in and the community adjusted to it. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
I didn't look at the hours of Sunday, but if you ask any person that's running a business downtown on Sunday between the hours of 8 and 1, is their business impacted? So you might look at this a little differently if you talk to those people, but I'm not comparing that. What I'm saying is it's an activity that was introduced and that people have to adjust to it. And we've all had to make adjustments in our life.
Okay. Now, I have a question, and then I'll make a few comments. My question is, well, I don't know if it's a question or a statement. When this came before the council, my recollection, and I think it's what Ryan's recollection was, we had, I think it was Dr. Radding came in, and he was representing the tennis players, and he had a ball and a paddle, and he went click, 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 click. He said, you know, that's a problem. And then I believe Tim countered that with saying there is equipment that muffles or deadens the sound, and it wasn't just the paddle. I thought it was also the ball. Is that an accurate statement? They do have a ball?
Yeah, there is a low noise ball as well.
Okay, so that's a possibility. I guess my feeling is maybe kind of going along with what Randy was saying, is that change is hard, adaptation is necessary, being good neighbors is also important. In fact, we have three parties here. We've got the people who live in the area, we got the people who like pickleball, and then we've got the public policymakers here, all of whom have some responsibility to say what can be done to mitigate this to a point where it's acceptable, and if not, what are the alternatives? And I mean, we're not going to solve that here this evening, but it would seem like if the pickleball players, you know, if we as the policymakers regulated the hours for now so that people aren't being disturbed at a time when they should be relaxing in the evenings and, you know, kind of quieting down in their lives. That's something that we could do that doesn't, I think you're already on that if I'm not mistaken. That if Tim says that there are paddles and balls that would still provide maybe not the same thing. I realize that the noise in some fashion is part of the game that is a certain pleasure, but that may be a pleasure would be foregone in the interest of being a good neighbor and not having some kind of a piercing noise that is penetrating. If the neighbors, I don't know if they have dual pane windows, but the fire departments are encouraging that to be done on all houses, particularly in Ojai. So that's something they could do. And then what Bill suggests is having a sound people come in and see whether or not, I don't think we'd want to turn this into like a handball courts. I think historically that would not be permissible because this is a landmarked area. But if on the perimeter of the property down where the gentleman who lives to the south of us here, if there's some kind of a baffle that could be created and then a green wall of sorts, certainly those should all be, you know, explored, priced out, and see, you know, what the possibilities are. I mean, the last and probably least acceptable to pickleball players right now is going back out trying to find a place to do this, and it would require some fairly expensive installation. And we don't have a lot of open property that would be suitable for it, so I think that's got to be kind of put on the shelf for a while and see whether or not we can do something to make it livable for the time being while we work through this. So I don't know what the council's pleasure is this evening, or whether this goes back to staff. We bring it back in 2 weeks with finding out what the costs are for a sound.
Well, I'd like to offer just, like you say, just for tonight something, but an ongoing process.
I have another suggestion too, when the time is
Okay.
right.
Well, one is, I believe the staff recommended 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. as at least, I think that, I'd like in the motion, I'm not saying I'm wedded to those hours, but at least we get some hours. We start with some hours. And I think I would make a motion, we start with the staff recommendation on hours, we get the signs posted, we see what happens, subject to further review. Second, that we work with the pickleball club people to find out what specifically we might want to do to refine the equipment standards to mandate. I know there's an issue, say, well, can we enforce or so on and so forth, but it would help to at least have a standardized approved list for equipment for play at that site, whether that involves both balls and paddles or just paddles, I don't know, but that's the second part of my motion is to get that list done to bring back. And third is, I'd like to ask that you come back with a proposal to, or identify somebody up to $10,000 for an acoustic consultant to look at the issue of sound mitigation for all of our recreational facilities.
And what about the issue of I don't know where this term buffer came from was regarding the meditation garden, but at least I never thought of that as a buffer of anything.
No, and I don't,
Primary use.
I have a problem with that too.
So it seems to me that there should be some conversation with the people in the meditation garden to have some hours for meditation.
Right, and that would be something to discuss as well. So that would be my motion, just to get us until the next meeting.
Okay, Susie, did you have a comment?
Well, if I were a pickleball player in the heat of summer, the most desirable time to play is 6 to 9, you know. But in consideration for the neighbors, I would go along with
That's where
your
I'm at.
recommendation. But I think simultaneously, could you do some fact-finding as to whether what hours Matilaha is available, so that perhaps we can coordinate when that's available, there's peace and quiet here, something along those lines. Okay? And of course, in the end, we're going to have winter and summer hours, I would think. But for now, that sounds good. Maybe even something in the middle of the day. I don't know. You know,
A break in the middle of the day.
a break in the middle of the day.
But anyway, this is just an initial interim recommendation I'm making to get us.
Again, are we engaged in kind of conversation with the school district?
Yes.
Because there is a section, I believe, in the education code that talks about community service and activity and cooperation. And I think we do have some arrangements with the school district. Because it does seem like over at Nordhoff, I don't know, that may not be a great location, but like for night play or something, I don't know if they have lights over there, but at least in the summertime, it doesn't seem to me that gets a lot of activity over there, and with some coordination, we might be able to move the night play, away from this area.
You know, it's interesting, this whole discussion started over the fact that we did have a court, and we were using a court for this. And we do have public facilities that could be rotated or made open to the pickleball people. If you go to the top 4 courts in Libby Park, there's not a soul on those courts probably from sunrise to sunset 6 days a week. I'll give them one day there might be some activity. But we never even considered that because we had a group of people who had a strong voice in the community that said, no, those courts are reserved only for. We had an opportunity in the beginning of this conversation to solve that by clearly stating that we'll convert 2 of those courts, we'll turn them into full-time pickleball, and during the tennis tournament, we'll take that 2-week, 3-week hiatus and give it to the tennis people. But we couldn't overcome that obstacle in this discussion. Oh my God, what would happen to this world if we played pickleball on a tennis court? You know, the world was coming to an end in that discussion. So we had this opportunity.
Had a derelict facility.
But,
Yeah, and so now what we've done is we've actually taken, and we appreciate the mayor for introducing us to this, because that committee had no idea where we weren't even thinking about this until you brought it up, Mayor, but it was a great opportunity to reintroduce.
It's interesting how you
like
give
that?
credit.
The use of
I like
this,
that, Mayor.
but the
A
use
month
of
or two
this
ago, it was your idea, but that's
But all I'm trying to say is watch. I think Bill's. I think the conversation is headed in the right direction. First of all, it's self-policing. It gets dark at 5:30. There's no one on these courts at 5:30.
Okay.
They're home. That's one. Two, there is a winner and there is a.
Okay, I'm going to second Bill's motion and move on. We don't need to.
but can we add to I want to add to the motion. I would like to add, is there any reason on earth we can't revisit that, the use of those courts?
That, I think,
That's
is
in the motion.
that is the essence of
interim
what
motion. It's
what
an
Bill
interim
is
motion.
saying. We're not taking anything off the table, but a lot of work went into this.
Yes.
This is a public facility. If it's possible to do what we were originally led to believe that it would not be this kind of a controversy because of noise, maybe we can get back to that. If we can't, and even if we could get the noise down, it sounds to me like the way the sport is expanding, we're going to have more requests for more areas.
It's not a permanent motion, it's a interim motion to get us to the next meeting where we're gonna
Yeah.
take it up again.
Good.
Okay.
And in the interim, I suggest you all come out and use the courts. Out of the 9 women that were there last night, my wife was one of them.
Now,
Please,
wait, no,
come
wait.
join.
All right.
Well, I have a better suggestion.
Ride your bike down.
The pickleball people can live in Ron's house for a week.
Okay, should we
That
vote?
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ron, is that open? Can we come
No,
down?
guys. We want to pass this
Okay.
motion and get the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, if there's no objection to Bill's motion, that will be the order to staff. And I think, not being facetious, I think we should all try to put ourselves in the shoes of people who live within the immediate perimeter of this property and see what it does. Because there is a difference in the way sound travels depending on the frequency or whatever the vibrations.
Mayor,
The worst is the bass, the thump, boom, boom, the
Well,
thump, boom.
I was
you
going to
get
say,
the car.
without opening that can of worms, think of the music that we have all summer long that I hear at the top of the hill there where I live. And, it'd been real easy to complain and moan and groan about that, but I see the benefit.
Except that was
to
part
the
of your
commu-
promotion, right?
But I see the benefit to the community.
And that annoying bell tower keeps waking me up in the morning.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Okay, we will attempt to mitigate the adverse effects of this and see if there are some alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are on
Set 'em all to play pickleball
number
and
4, is that
save an
correct?
hour.
I bet you'd appreciate that.
I was wondering how long it would take you to give me any credit, because while everybody was taking a bow, I thought I saw you out front, yeah. Okay, Ventura River Watershed report.
I need to recuse myself due to representing parties in the litigation.
Okay, just a second. Ask the audience if they,
This is.
yeah, if those who are leaving the meeting will step outside with their conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could maybe.
Seriously.
I must have been asleep
Okay.
at the wheel too. But that's still, we still have that.
Okay, we'll take a couple of minutes here until everybody, does anybody need a break? Ryan's taking one.
Oh, Ryan had to remove himself from this, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he's.
Okay, let's take,
Yeah, he's
let's
recusing
take a
himself.
health break.
No, let's, whatchamacallit, let's get this
Yeah,
done.
quick health break.
No, or if you're not, I'll stay.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
let's go. Okay, we will,
Yeah.
adjudication report.
The city attorney and I will give a brief update. This item is kind of a standing item on the agenda for the time being while the Ventura River watershed adjudication is ongoing. We plan to have this on the agenda so we can update the public on some of the actions, and it's a fast-moving litigation. Essentially, what we can announce today is the city has filed an ex parte stay in the litigation, asking for a 6-month extension. I don't know. The city has filed a 6-month extension, an application for a 6-month extension in the litigation that will be heard on Thursday, the 27th. We understand that the city of Ventura also filed an application for a 6-month extension, so we are hopeful. And with that, if the city attorney has anything to add.
The only point I'll add is that if the 6-month extension is granted as requested by the Ojai City Council, then those who have been served or named in the suit would not need to respond. But stay tuned, as if the court does not grant the request, then folks will need to evaluate their options, as to will the council. We are cautiously optimistic that the court is likely to grant the request for stay, as almost everyone benefits from additional time to evaluate the case, and even the judge would benefit from more time on his desk. So we are cautiously optimistic it will be granted, but nothing is certain until Thursday.
Okay. Mayor, would we be able to post as soon as the court does rule, we could post that on the website, or just make sure we do our part to make
Yeah, we can definitely
everybody
get some.
find out what the court's ruling is as soon as we know.
Yeah, we'll make sure to do that. As soon as we find out, we'll post it on our website and our Facebook page.
Yep.
And then just for clarity, it was us and the city of Ventura. Did Casitas Municipal Water District did not participate in requesting the extension? And any of the other parties right now so far that are?
My understanding was Casitas and some of the other parties, they acknowledged it, encouraged it, but they didn't actually file their own application, is my understanding.
It was more of a non-opposition from the other parties.
Mayor, if I might comment, as an individual council member, I want to make sure I'm not stating city policy here. I'm speaking as an individual council member. But Councilperson Haney and I did personally request these other agencies to also file this action, and we think they should have as a matter of policy. That's, I believe I can speak for Councilman Haney. That's our personal feeling. And I also, I will be going personally. I hope I have time tomorrow to go to the Casitas Municipal Water District meeting, as I have been going to Ventura River Water District, Miners Oaks Water District, and ask them to take a principled stand, not betraying, confidential legal discussions, but a public debate, principled stand on whether on this whole issue of adjudication, because I think that as I have explained in public, I believe the whole principle. The whole approach of adjudication, as opposed to collaborative agreements that are adaptive and holistic, as the governor has stated his preference for, are an existential threat to proper watershed management, and I think everybody possible should take a principled position against it. That's my statement.
Right. Anything further?
No,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, Bill and I did attend the Association of Water Agencies meeting where the two lawyers presented their. The Ventura County has the distinction of having two cases where water basins are being adjudicated in our county.
The first two since
the first
new
two,
law.
since the new law. And if I understand your comments, Bill, is that what you're saying is that the concept of adjudicating a water basin has become obsolete because of the environmental laws and the fact that what we came away from the last meeting, the message was, if you're doing this to get certainty and to have things over, it's not over till it's over, and it will never be over entirely except through collaboration and adaptation as you go along with the local areas, or the people locally are in the best position to come to the
Collaborative community.
Yeah, a solution that won't be perfect, but will be more easily adjusted as time passes and the circumstances change.
Right.
And the circumstances will change. Climate is changing one way or another, whether my friend Mr. Daddy is right, and that's just the natural evolution and went the way of the woolly mammoth, or whether you believe, as I do, that climate change is a real thing. We got to cope with it, and this idea of adjudicating back in the days of the pioneers or the land grants doesn't make a lot of sense now.
Well, Mayor,
Randy,
real quickly, one of the unintended consequences of this lawsuit is actually, and I've said this a number of times, is getting all of the major players in one room at one time to actually start talking about this.
Yeah.
So I don't think Ventura knew they were doing that in the beginning, but guess what? They got it. And now it's going to happen, and it's going to happen one way or the other. We're just all hoping that it happens in collaborative manner versus an adjudicated manner.
And I think that the city of Ventura would like it to happen that way too, now that they realize what kind of a can of worms they've opened up. Okay, item number 5, report from the ad hoc subcommittee on attendance policy. And we have what,
Did we finish?
one card?
Okay, we're done. We don't have
Okay,
credit direction of staff. Okay. All right, sorry.
Okay, by way of introduction to this particular long-standing and suffering issue, Bill and I tried to boil it down and try to make it as simple as possible. We've had some comments and letters submitted, and I have one card here, so why don't we start with Brian, and then we can deliberate ourselves. Brian Aiken, you're up.
Just real quick, Brian Akins, Chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. I just want you to know that this was discussed in our last Historic Preservation Commission meeting, so we're all aware of the importance of this to the council. And I've asked in meeting with our community development director that it be on what you decide tonight will also be covered in our upcoming HPC meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, Bill, you want to?
Well, just for purposes of moving us along, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve this as a matter of council policy.
And I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's have some discussion. Ryan, did you?
I just want to point out the irony that this issue has showed up again. It has not missed us as far as attending. This is like the 5th time I think we've dealt with this in the last year. So this issue keeps attending, although some of the people apparently aren't. All right, that's it. But other than that, well, what is, are you recommend, I mean, was your motion for
Yes.
just what's listed on here? Okay.
Yes, the
All right.
motion of the policy as a way of establishing a policy that doesn't get into, dealing individual names, but just establishes a procedure.
I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that we might want to read this into the record so that people at home know what we're talking about.
You want me to read my motion?
I just don't know if anybody.
Okay, I will read it. If that's-
Because it was printed separately, I actually thought it was something
So
separate.
the motion is, as a matter of council policy, any and all council-appointed commission or board positions whose incumbent has tabulated more than 3 absences in the most recent 12-month reporting period shall be declared an interim commissioner or board member. At that time, the city clerk shall issue a notice inviting applications, including from the incumbent, to fill the commissioner board position for a new permanent term through the remainder of the interim commissioner or board member's term. The existing commissioner board member will continue to serve on an interim basis until a new permanent appointment is confirmed by council.
Thank you, Bill.
Right. Would you consider, amending your motion so, as it was requested by several members of the Planning Commission, they meet 24 times a year as opposed to 12 times a year, that they be allowed a little bit of, in fairness, I think we're saying 4 currently, right?
More than 3.
More than 3. So allow them, 4, even up to 7.
With respect, Sousa, I will not accept that amendment because of the, if anything else, the enhanced importance of the Planning Commission, especially at this time with the general plan update. No, I don't. I think the integrity of the commission.
But, go ahead.
Yeah, for purposes of discussion, I'll point out that you're running the risk of alienating some highly qualified, long-time planning commissioners.
Well, we're not dismissing them.
I know you're not dismissing them, but it sends a message to me of disrespect.
Okay.
I don't feel that it's the right way to go about it. I think it's more important to have long-term commissioners than run the risk that we have, if they don't like our policy and they say, well, I'm doing all this work and now I'm going to be reviewed because I'm being docked because I went to a conference in San Francisco to do with their responsibilities. It just doesn't feel right to me. I feel that it's more important to have long-time commissioners. We used to have commissioners that served, I think, for up to even 12, 18 years, if I'm correct. And I think that's partly because we allowed some flexibility in their attendance. If we get rigid, I think it could cause problems.
Okay, well, in the conversations I've had with Bill, I am persuaded that having people serve on commissions for 18 years, could be beneficial, but I don't think that should be our goal. Any more than having council members serving for 18 years. But I do, the one thing, I received a letter from one member of the Planning Commission, and they raised what you have just mentioned, and this more than 3 absences means that at the 4th absence, it triggers, having given that a little more thought, I think that might be a bit severe, but I don't think it should be 7 or 8. Do we know how many meetings the Planning Commission actually has in a year? Because there are holidays and there were canceled meetings.
We can get that information because we included it in the last time it came around. So
okay, so if a meeting is canceled, either they're dark because of a holiday or because they didn't have.
They don't have a quorum.
Well, no, that's separate.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
but-
so
but-
if it's canceled for any reason not related to attendance, it's not counted as an absence.
Right.
If it's canceled because of absences, we count it as an absence.
Okay, and how much do we have in the way of this idea of traveling, this idea of being away? I don't think that necessarily should be self-designated by commissions, that they are going to be gone because they have decided that this is improving their,
No, it also might be an enhancement of their private work.
Right, yeah, so
It's a dual purpose, which again, it's an absence.
Okay, so if we have 24, is that what you thought there were, 24 meetings?
Well, if it's twice a month.
Yeah,
Times
okay.
12.
I think there were only 20 or
There's some-
22.
About-
something.
yeah,
So I
less
think
than
it's
20,
more
I
like
think.
20, and that means that you
Yeah.
can be, if we were to say 4 absences, and then it triggers, just one more year, that would be giving the
Well, it is
members
4
a
absences.
20% absentee rating. That is seems like, I don't think any of the council, if you have more than 1 or 2 absences in your whole term. So anyway, I would be open to loosening up that just a little bit, like to 4, but I wouldn't want
It
to.
is 4. It's more than 3.
Well, yeah, but more than that, I think that
We had that.
if it's more than 3, it triggers it. If
At
it's
4.
4 absences and
So you're
then-
saying
then-
5 or more.
Well, I'm saying 4 or more, I guess.
4 or more, which is, isn't that the same exact
As
thing?
presently worded at more than 3, the 4th absence
Yeah.
triggers the interim status.
4 or more would mean the same thing.
No.
4 or more would mean the same thing, yes.
Yes, it would.
Or-
Usually the law is written in the affirmative of 4 or more, not more than 3. So at the 4th or more absences, then this rule would kick into effect.
Okay, so
I
then-
have
okay,
absolutely
so,
no problem changing it to 4 or more.
That's just the way it's normally written. I know what you mean.
No, okay,
But you
but-
can see the confusion, right?
Okay, but if a person had 4 absences,
Then they would,
Then they're on the
then they
list.
would automatically
Interim.
become interim?
just like it says here.
Right,
Well,
and then
then
they'd be
let's-
invited to basically reapply for the position.
Yeah, okay, and the idea was then that nobody would ever have to make single anybody out, the person by their own actions, and they could come to the interview and say, look, I was attending conferences, and they say, okay, we'll nominate you to be reappointed to a permanent term.
Right.
Okay.
Well, if I may, I would suggest one, and I don't really want to overdo this. We dealt with this over a year ago.
Okay. then.
But the one thing I would change is that if you were willing to amend the motion, is to have, and I don't know who would, either the mayor or the council as a whole, be able to say, hey, before we just send this out and require a whole new application process, that there is that you don't have to go to the application process. That if there's some finding that the individual had either an excuse or some good reason, they go, okay, we're going to continue it or amend the rule to your next absence is going to be the one where this happens.
The problem I have with that is that gets away from the intent here, was to have a policy that didn't involve having to get into personal things before council. Would be, they're perfectly willing to make the case.
I like you, I don't like you. That's what it removes.
And
I don't
then,
like that.
Well, it
I'm
does
with-
and it doesn't.
I
Because it makes a lot more BS that we have to go through, because if you
Yeah.
just want to keep that same commissioner, then you ultimately have to go through the whole process
I'm
of
with
sending
you.
it out and
Yeah.
going
It
through
being
the
a long
process.
process.
Well,
We've all sat on a commission.
But then are you saying that you're going to put ads in the paper, and then you're going to get these novices, and you know full well we still want Kathy Nolan to continue to be the commissioner? I think that's
Okay, I'm
false.
trying to get away from talking about individuals, but
Well,
we also might
I
get
don't-
somebody,
listen, it's
we might
all-
also
it's
get somebody
public-
that's got a degree in urban planning that is, been in the town for 20 years and would love to contribute.
It's a
Let
pub-
Susan
it's
say it
public-
and then respond.
It's public information, the number of times they've been absent. If we pass this rule, it's going to trigger 2 of our commissioners. So the result of that trigger is going, 3. Oh, right,
Five
yeah,
of our
you're right.
commissioners.
3,
Five.
3
Five
out
of
of
our-
5, okay?
5.
3 out
Five
of 5 are
commissioners or
being
something.
triggered.
5.
So now you're going to put an ad in the paper and seek out applications. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, I'm not voting for this.
Anyway, that's my motion.
You get to sit there.
To
I have
answer
one
the-
question.
to answer the
I just have one more thing, Mayor. What is this, how does your policy, what's the message it sends to the commissioners that are responsible, that show up, that participate, and actually see the benefit of being a member? Now it says, you can do all that, but guess what? You don't have to be there. Just when you get there, you get there. You know, it's tiresome.
Well,
You know that, if you're gonna be a commissioner, then accept that responsibility, show up and do it. And stop looking for excuses not to participate.
Okay.
I have a question.
I just
I
get
don't want
it. I just get it.
your health, Randy.
Listen, I had 8 years of recreation and parks. I missed maybe one time in 8 years.
Okay.
I can just say, it's a responsibility that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Well, you're guys are
Ryan,
going to be really
Ryan's
busy.
going to.
I just wanted some clarification on that. You had 12-month reporting period. Is that a always trailing 12 months, or is there a reporting period that's defined somewhere?
I think it's defined in our
The
protocol.
current protocols, it's
in
a
our protocol.
calendar year reporting period.
So it's a calendar year.
Yeah,
Okay.
but this is intended, if the protocols were adjusted to fiscal year, then this would match with that.
It meshes
Okay.
with the protocol, is the intent.
Okay.
So just to answer the
Should we
question.
say the protocol period then instead of the reporting period? Because that's a whole different meaning.
In other words, change it to the most recent.
I don't care. Whatever you guys think is the best way to write it. I just didn't know what it meant. So
I mean,
the
the
only thing
intention is that this
it's
gets-
important that commissioners know if they miss 3 in December and 3 in January, that's 3 for each year.
Right.
They should at least know clearly what that delineation is. And
How about
this
if we
rule makes
said,
it a little harder to know.
how about if we said most recent 12-month reporting period as defined in council protocol, or commission protocols?
Yeah.
As
If that's
defined
a
in commission
Matt
protocols?
That would be fine, yeah.
Okay.
As defined in commission
Okay.
protocols.
Mayor, I'd also like, because Brian had brought it up, and Steve's here from the planning, both chairs, but I think it would benefit us if this passes tonight, is that the city manager talk to the liaisons to each of these commissions, and that they go and they actually explain clearly what just took place, so that there is clarity and there is no ambiguity. Ryan, I agree with you on that. So that people do know what their responsibilities are, and if they've exceeded it, they know what they can do too. No one's removing anybody. We're giving everyone an opportunity to proceed. We're just setting up some finite expectations and some policy. It's not against anybody.
That's right.
So the quick report back is there were 22 planning commission meetings last year, and 3 canceled due to lack of quorum. So just as
3.
background
The
information.
22 that actually occurred.
22 that actually occurred.
And 3 canceled because lack of quorum.
Well, remember, I'm gloating here. I was the one that wanted 7, it to stay 7. That's significant. Lack of,
To stay
So-
7, what?
we originally had 7 planning commissioners.
Yeah,
We reduced it to 5.
right, like most cities, yeah.
And then, it was the quorum, because there was just, when did the lack of a quorum occur, when there were 7 or 5? How did that work?
I think that one of those 3 was after it had dropped to 5.
Okay, the chairman of the commission has got his hand up.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
with five.
I was at one that got canceled for a quorum at 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Oh, yes.
I was there for one.
Yeah, that's right. This was showing a vacancy. So yeah, all three of those were, you're correct. The three were all canceled with 5 members, with 5-member commissions.
All right, should we go?
Let's vote.
So the motion reads, what, just as it was, as we wrote?
With one amendment that was accepted in the most recent 12-month reporting period as defined in commission protocols.
And I'm going to ask if we can to amend it to say tabulated 4 or more
And I'm fine with
absences.
that
I think
as
that's
well.
clear.
4 or more is
if you
fine.
don't
If
mind.
it's more, the tighter
Okay.
legally,
Okay.
that's fine. Same difference, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And if it becomes a problem, you can always revisit
Change
it.
it.
It's a motion, the council can change as they see fit.
Okay.
Okay,
Do we need to vote on it, or is that
we
it?
should have a,
Roll call?
Vote may make sense as it may not be unanimous.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, okay. Will the clerk call the roll?
Mayor Johnston,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
Councilmember Haney,
I mean, no,
Yes.
wait. I didn't mean to say yes. No, I meant to say no. How do I do this, Mr. City Attorney?
Your comments have accomplished the mission. Let the clerk reflect the
I
record.
was thinking, you know what? It's going to come back again.
Get a 50-50
They're going to
chance.
see.
Okay,
No.
do you mean no now? If you mean no now,
No,
okay,
I
we will
adamantly
record it
say
as
no.
such. Okay,
Councilmember Haney.
I said yes, and I recommended Souza take the 5th.
okay. We are now to council member reports. So we'll start down at this end. Bill, do you have one?
I do it during it.
Bill, do you have a council report?
No.
Okay, Ryan.
I do not.
Okay, Randy.
I do not.
No, Susan? You?
Oh, I just want to say that today, the Board of Supervisors, on a 3-2 vote, passed the resolution that, I have to change my gears here, to list our mountain lions as endangered species because, and this was triggered by the recent killing of one of the very rare number of males. I think there's only 2. The tragic, unnecessary killing. And I went through and I read the letters from the ranchers, so I could see their point of view. But the resolution is in support. There's a meeting, the Fish and Wildlife in April. So they're asking cities and boards to pass resolutions or write letters in support. And I would like to request, since the resolution at the county is very straightforward, perhaps we could adopt a similar resolution and then send a letter from the full council rather than me just sending it as an individual.
Okay, is there,
I can, make sure that you have you probably have it. Would that be,
is that,
Yeah.
any objection putting that on the next agenda?
Sounds like a future agenda item, not a council
Yeah.
report, but
yeah.
Okay.
But it has to be in by April 3rd.
So did you have
I
any
think.
reports? Because you just asked for an agenda item. Is this?
Oh, I was reporting this,
Yeah,
but it turned
okay,
into
so-
that.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me see if
like a butterfly, it just turned into it.
the rest can wait. The rest
Okay,
can
good.
wait.
Okay, city manager, do you have a report?
Quick report, if I may. I did want to note, we've had a lot of questions from people asking if the city still does short-term rental enforcement. We still do short-term rental enforcement, and we're currently doing enforcement. We also are currently investigating some new tools that we're looking to roll out as well soon. So we'll have more on that in coming meetings. And then just quickly for the next council meeting, we have a couple of items currently planning to come back. One is we're bringing back an item to talk about a possible program related to the electric engine or the gas engine prohibition. So we're looking at some programs to try to get some incentives or some options going. So we're going to try to bring that back next meeting. The organic food waste item back next meeting. a budget forecast for next fiscal year, the watershed adjudication, which we'll have as a standing item, and then we'll bring back some of the pickleball research that we do.
James, there's something else. Did you forget? Do you know what we'll know at the next meeting that we don't know now?
Oh.
We will know whether Measure C is passed.
Oh, really? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was thinking that.
Thank you.
I have a question for the city manager,
Bill.
Mayor. In the, in terms of the North Signal parking situation,
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if we could get a report from staff, not just on what our options were about some parking restrictions, especially for tour buses up there that are creating an issue, but also there's that marked private road that goes to the Pratt Trailhead. So it's public access but privately maintained, which is always a weird situation. And, what are our options there in terms of some sort of improvements that could be made? I mean, I don't know if you've driven it recently. It's a real test of your suspension system.
If I know correctly, I don't think the city, at least when I had to review it, the city didn't have a right-of-way, but there was a fire right-of-way over there, but it was an issue with the building at 1103.
And there's also a parking area at the Pratt Trailhead.
Yeah,
But
nice parking.
it's a real adventure to get there if you have a low clearance car. I thought it might be worthwhile. What are our options there?
Yeah,
I have no idea what they are.
We can bring back some initial options. There's some quick things, like some of these other items, there's some quick things we can do, and then maybe some more long-term.
I don't know who has title to that private road or what the arrangement is for that private road, but it is public access and privately maintained, and I don't know what that means.
Can we, Mayor, at the same time regarding that, can we also maybe have Captain Rivera give us a police report on the number of vehicles that are cited in that, let's say,
And like
within
the
a 6-month period?
And
think we
what,
should
to
have
what
that
extent we maybe do have a fire access issue that's
Mhm.
in fact, demonstrated that we got a first responder access problem there from over parking up there.
Well, those facts will help us
Yeah.
make decisions
I
that
don't
we
know
need
if
to
that
make.
counts as a fire road anymore, does it? Is it still a fire?
I have no
access road?
idea.
Yeah, I know. Better look into that.
But
Well,
it
that's
is-
gonna be an
Assumed it
issue.
was.
That's coming up on 3 other issues, so.
But it is a
But
marked.
At least it crosses over.
It is a marked public access trailhead
Yeah.
road,
Mhm.
but I don't know how all that works.
Yeah.
In terms of.
Well, as much as I don't like causing a debate where we don't need one, we ought to look into it up there. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Just look at it.
We've heard enough rumbling. It's been a problem it's
Yeah.
been awkward for a long time.
Can I ask a question of the city attorney related to
I've got a
this?
future agenda item next, by the
Okay,
way.
just a second. Okay.
Yeah, related to this, to what extent can we regulate tour buses on our narrow country roads?
We have a variety of tools depending on the size and jurisdictional status of the road. We'll get you guys a complete analysis of them.
Yeah.
Short answer is prohibiting them entirely is difficult, but we can impose a variety of regulations that can reduce the number of tour bus options, and we'll get an assessment of those to the council.
And include a place where they can park, and then just let them mark it in a positive way. They get to walk up North Signal. It's beautiful. They're gonna love it. The Oaks guests paid $100 a day to walk that street.
That's right.
You know? Really, true.
We'll move the parked buses from up there down here. But if we need signage, we have some really nice stop signs that have poles that aren't used.
You could rent some electric scooters.
Okay.
Attach a number of things to those if you would like.
Yeah.
No, but it's
Tell you what, we'll open the city hall on Saturday morning if you guys want to continue that particular line. of
I can't.
thinking.
I'm playing pickleball.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, it'll be close.
I have a future
yeah.
agenda item, Mayor, two of them.
Okay, we're going to agenda items right now.
Future agenda, I have two things. One, I want to raise the issue of whether we need to agendize moving forward or how to move forward on the Franklin and Montgomery Corner site that we designated for housing development. There's a couple things that, options that we might want to look at there. I think it probably requires a future agenda item. Do we have a design that we've accepted and we can maybe look at contracting to move forward on construction documents to kind of get something in play in terms of looking at other development agencies or something? I mean, I'm thinking it's time.
Yeah, we had a meeting with the area housing authority, and they were going to get back with a kind of a quick pro forma on the cost. This idea of you were there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The initial reaction from the area housing authority, and this is with free land. They're saying that what they in the industry is referred to as units or doors in a multiple residential about $300,000 per door, which seemed stiff. And then we thought, oh, well, okay, maybe we could shave it down to 250. He said, no. He says, that's the hard cost. That's the bricks and mortar. Then you have to put in all the permits and the rest of it. And he said it's another $200,000 to $300,000. That's $500,000.
And that's part of what motivates my putting this on the agenda, maybe for us to authorize actually, maybe working with somebody. We have people, at least one person in the community has already looked into this on a pro bono basis. It might be able to develop some value engineering construction documents and just have, again, information for us to deliberate on.
Right, but are you talking about like a workshop thing?
No, actually, where we contract with someone to do an exercise of construction stipulation and see what they come up with.
Okay.
And that's what I'm thinking we might want to do.
Any objection to that?
No?
Yeah, we
Well,
try to get it
put
off
that
dead.
on the agenda, right?
Yeah,
try to
put
get
it on the agenda.
Yeah, try to get it off dead center.
Right. And then the second thing I'd like to ask is that I do think we probably ought to put on the agenda to discuss the status of the well moratorium, just as an agenda discussion.
Okay. Yeah, James, could Greg or somebody look into the regulations with the county? I know that at the OBGMA, we periodically get a request for an individual lot to do this, and there was some kind of a trigger they have in the county prohibition or moratorium that allows it to be selectively done. I don't know that we would want to.
And OBGMA still has jurisdiction even if we modified our moratorium.
Yeah, they'd still go to them for.
They still have to go to OBGMA. I just think it's worthy of an agenda discussion.
Casitas is in the process of asking for a new well that we might have just gotten a highlight for the 27th on mutual well number 7.
I was at that meeting, Ryan.
Well, it said the 27th.
Okay, well, Mike.
That's the resubmission.
Yeah, okay.
The initial submission.
My only concern, Bill, with how we do this, the lifting of a moratorium on drilling wells during an adjudication and during what is still a drought condition sends sort of the wrong message to the public. So we need to see if we
I'm
can
not
finesse
presupposing
it.
an outcome. I just think it ought to be on the agenda for discussion.
Okay, good.
know.
Nobody objects to that. I think it is a topic that we ought to.
And I just want to say the health of the basin is different than the health of our drought. And those are two independent things. And the basin and additional well resources in the basin are not necessarily a bad thing, in my personal.
Okay. So, that.
Hey, I'm not
Just a
done.
minute, just a minute.
So,
Okay.
yeah, he's not closing this off, he's
Okay.
moved it over. So,
Okay.
two things real quick. The Clean Energy Alliance is about a year old. Can we get a report back as to what the level of clean energy we're actually receiving?
You see the clean energy, are you talking about the CPA?
Clean Power Alliance, thank you, thank you, Mayor. And the other thing is, again, I think it behooves us to present to the community what the different rates are. 100%, 50%, 35%.
Right.
So that people understand that they can opt out or, because I'm getting a lot of questions about this, and part of it was when we were talking about solarization, was we kept coming back to us that, well, we're still not getting 100% green power from any of this. So, and we talked to someone on the phone the other day, my wife and I, and they said, once this power goes into the transmission lines, you technically don't know if it's green, brown, gray, or orange.
Okay, I can give you a clarification right now.
No, Mayor.
Let me answer your question, because you're leaving an impression that is kind of sharing the continued misunderstanding and ignorance. The whole idea of the clean power choice is that you individually make a decision that you are going to pay the rate for clean power, and then that is purchased and it goes into the grid. It's true. They don't track it to each house. Okay. The idea is to create an economic, a market force to buy more and more clean energy. So those of us who want to do it at 100%, have to pay a little more, and that's all been mailed out to everybody.
So all I'm trying to say is, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, all I'm saying is it needs to be told to the public again. If you're at that 100%, you're paying 9 to 10% more for your energy. People need to know that. The 50%, you're paying 7% more. If you opt to the 35, it's
I don't think
2% under. So you're still getting clean
Hey,
energy.
are those numbers accurate? Because you said you
We
wanted to know.
just got them from the, SC&E, from the, who's our energy? Who's our?
Via phone
Okay,
call?
yeah.
California.
So your request is to have a report back to the council on what those rates are currently.
The rates would be great currently, and also the fact would be, after a year, where are we in the state regarding this type of power? We must have started at one level, and we've got to be, are we better off today, or are we, based on what your conversation is, are we buying more because we have more money to buy? Or,
Well, clearly, the Clean Power Alliance is buying more. Now, how does that play out throughout the state or for our area? I don't know, but but you that's a good question, and you should have a good answer to it.
Right.
We'll get that for you.
okay, then so whether it's you or whether it's Michelle or whoever, how we choose to do that. Then the other thing is, I keep getting this question. Why are city employees still using gas-powered backpacks? And here's the problem. We bought Still. Still makes a gas-powered backpack, and they look very
Very much
Yeah.
the same, yeah.
very much the same.
Yes.
So I am defending city employees.
Thank
that,
you.
No, I watched the mayor, I watched Bill, I watched Ryan. They beat him up. We don't know anymore. But we need to do a better job of marketing what we're doing. We need to put it on our trucks. We need to do something that lets the public know that we're 100% behind this and that we are not using two-cycle power.
You know,
Can't we
and-
just
and if I
simply
can
tell
add-
people who raise that question? Because it's, I
Well-
understand you've identified it. People don't know the difference, but the answer clearly is, we are not using
Right.
gas-powered backpacks.
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Funny, Randy and I had discussed this, and I don't know where we've left. I think it's coming back to council about the regulatory scheme and the permitting and stuff like
Right.
that. I think that this is an opportunity to share what we're doing in a couple ways. But if we're going to have that process, and with this problem you have, we ought to create, I think, a sticker. And a sticker that we adhese to everything that's clear and is something really neat and cool, and you can recognize it immediately, and it's from the city of Ojai. But then on those, right prominently on the backpack, we can have that sticker. When individuals, get their registration and they register their electric equipment, we put the sticker right on there, whether it has a date or anything else that's necessary. It might have some practical purpose. But if we do something that looks nice, that kind of, and that makes it easy for enforcement, right? If the sticker's not on there, they can tell from, a block away or whatever. And then it's kind of a rite of passage for this stuff, and it seems like it'd be cheap and cool, and it can, and I'd put one on, my car or something if I could, but that's not electric. But if I had an electric car, you're darn right I would. So
Yeah. We'll bring back
I'll tell you,
options.
it's not hard to enforce. You can smell it, you can hear it.
Yeah. We'll bring back
And
options
it's pretty
when we-
clear.
well, obviously there's still some confusion on somebody's part out there.
You're right, I know, but do we want a whole city program because a few people are confused? I mean, Randy's gonna do a good job on his own because he's an expert, right?
We also,
What I'm saying is, to me, it's like, we did this and we made it clear what we were doing and what we were trying to achieve.
Yeah, and if we want people to be proud of making the change, we ought to make them be proud of making the change.
We gotta sell it.
And a bucket of stickers are like $10.
yeah, we've actually ordered the 100% green zone stickers that we're putting on our vehicles, so we're doing that.
Okay,
But
good.
we'll look at some other ideas too.
Okay, good idea.
Entering a green zone. We got a nuclear free.
We're still on future agenda or
Okay,
questions?
now it is your turn.
Yeah. James, is the parking committee still going to meet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and Greg, this Public Works Director, and I met, and we went through some of the items that we've completed, so we're going to present that back to the Parking Committee.
Okay. But what does it take to get adequate bike parking in this city? Because I'm still seeing, and I have photographs I'm going to send you tomorrow just to give you a nudge, of clumps of bicycles, 8 just, because there's nothing. And there's just more and more people coming out. So, and then, and related to that, the benches, is there funding, or do we wait till Measure C passes?
So we have both bike racks and benches that we have recently installed, so that's going to be part of the report back. We have more bike racks that we're still going to install, and then if that those could be items that we fund with Measure C, but we have some that we're ready to install too.
Does that mean ready to install in the near future?
Yeah, so we've installed, I think it's like 5 or 6 different large bike racks in the last 2 months or so. So we'll report on that, but I'm hearing that we need more. We have some more.
Who makes the determination as to where they're put and
So-
how they impact the public right
Because
away?
I
So-
said I wanted to be in on that. I want to see where they go.
Right, and when we installed like the one here with the
Yeah,
parking
that's
committee.
true,
So when we had the parking committee, we identified some sites for different items to be installed, and so we went through and had some of the different size bike racks and where they were going, and some of those bike the striping for bikes that we added in and things like that. So.
Well, I'm just saying, so if they're put into a public right of way, is that brought back to council as far as a discussion as to where we're putting them, or we're just arbitrarily making that decision?
So I guess for us, some of those simple bike racks, like the one here in front of City Hall, we met with the bike or the parking committee. You can drop it in and you can move it around, so we did that. But for some of the larger scale ones, we could bring those back to council.
Well, I'm just looking at something that impacts the public right of way. I think there has to be a discussion on it.
Well, and I think letting people know where the bike
Yes.
racks
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, we could
I
talk
assume
about
they're
that.
pretty
Just
darn
remember,
convenient.
remind Greg, the rule is it should be as visible and as close as the nearest parking spot. Okay, and if we have to remove a parking spot to install a rack for 12 bikes, so be it. But it doesn't work to hide it under some
Okay,
stairs.
we'll have it brought back to council then, if you want to get into that,
That's what I
okay,
bring
fine.
back to council.
The green circles work great. by the
Okay.
way.
All right, thank you.
Those were a lot of the ones we put in.
We're done.
Yay.
Thank you.